We'd all stand and face the flag. Is Dale here? Dale, are you here? Yes, come forward. You lead us in the pledge, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Dale, would you like to tell us what's happening at Jersey Mike's? Come to the microphone.
On Thursday at Jersey Mike's, Mayor Woods has declared Thursday, March 26th, to be the Day of Giving at Jersey Mike's. We are donating 100% of our proceeds that day for Bert's Big Adventure. Bert's Big Adventure is a nonprofit organization that caters to children who have terminally and chronically ill. They take families to Disney World for approximately 1 week. This charity is really, really awesome because of the fact that you know where every single cent of this money is going. Once you're in the Bert's Big Adventure family, if you have a child that goes into the hospital, they have what they call fairy godmothers that actually go to the hospital every single day and bring that child a present, bring the family a lunch or dinner, whatever they need. And that is constantly throughout the whole child's life. If during the course of the year your child, you or as a family, is having a problem, Bert's Big Adventure will also help you too. The best part about this organization and why I'm so passionate about it is because this is the legacy of my grandson who passed away in 2006 at 5 years old with liver cancer. When Jersey Mike's saw that month that what happened, they decided they wanted to do something. Within 13 stores, we collected $20,000 in 1 month for Aflac Center. Giving the Aflac Center $20,000 was like giving them a Tic Tac for research. So we were able to give it to the family services, and they told us that it was going to go for children's toys and everything. Well, that's a big organization. You never really know where the money goes. That's why we picked up with Bert's Big Adventure, and because of that, Jersey Mike's has taken the Day of Giving across the United States with every single store that they have. Every different store has a different charity. Ours here in Atlanta is Bert's Big Adventure. Last year we raised $80,000 in 1 day. So what I'm doing is I'm cordially inviting everybody who is here and for you to tell everybody that you know, please go to Jersey Mike's on Wednesday, March 26th, buy a sandwich so that we could have even a greater day this year than we did last year. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Dale. Let's have a hand for Dale. And they are great subs. It's right there on Holcomb Bridge Road, just west of Highway 9 on the eastern side, east of Highway 9, just on the south side of Holcomb Bridge Road. Jersey Mike's great subs. So I will see you there. I'll be there for lunch on Wednesday, March 26th, and I tried to give them some money last time. They said come back on the 26th, so I'll be there. Next, we'd like to recognize the American Red Cross Month for 2014. If I have the representatives of the Red Cross come forward, please. Whereas the American Red Cross helps nearly 1,300 disaster-stricken families each year just in metropolitan Atlanta, provides 24-hour support to members of the military, veterans and their families, collects and distributes blood for patients in hospitals, and annually trains 27,000 of our neighbors in first aid, water safety, and other life-saving skills. And I remember getting my American Red Cross life-saving skills so I could be a lifeguard in high school. And whereas the Red Cross has been helping Metro Atlanta for 100 years, Red Cross heroes are on the front lines in local communities every day, volunteering their time, giving blood, taking life-saving courses, and providing financial donations to those in need. And whereas the Red Cross is not a government agency, and relies upon donations of time, money, and blood to do their work. And whereas March is the month dedicated to all those everyday heroes who join the Red Cross mission to prevent and alleviate human suffering in the face of emergencies. And whereas in its centennial year, the Metro Atlanta Red Cross is celebrating our community and all the work we make possible with your support. Now, therefore, I, Jerry Wood, Mayor of the City of Roswell, do hereby proclaim March 2014 as American Red Cross Month and urge all the citizens of Roswell to support the Red Cross. So let's have a hand for the Red Cross and we'll hear from them.
Well, thank you very much. I'm Phil Jeminder, and I'm here with my colleague to talk about the Red Cross. First of all, I'm a volunteer board member for the Atlanta Metro Red Cross chapter. I'm a volunteer. I'm also a citizen here of Roswell, so it's very exciting for me to be here. And we certainly appreciate and take this honor of American Red Cross Month and the Proclamation. And as you said, it's our 100th year. We're very excited. We started off with Run for the Red this weekend. Meredith and her family actually participated in it, and it's very exciting. And as you know, one of the things that makes Red Cross special is it's really about neighbors helping neighbors, and that's why we become very passionate about this. And so we want to be able to thank, the everyday heroes, the citizens of our community here in Roswell, who make this possible and have made it possible for the last 100 years or so. And through their gifts of time, money, and literally blood, which helps us every day. Go ahead.
You stated it very well, but Metropolitan Atlanta relies heavily on the Red Cross, and the Red Cross relies heavily on the local communities to support its mission, which is the 5 key areas that you mentioned of disaster preparedness and response, blood services, life-saving training, support for military families and veterans, and emergency communications for international families. So we invite you to join us as we begin our next century of helping Roswell and other local communities. There's a lot of ways that we can partner with the local community. You can visit us at atlantaredcross.org to learn more about it, and we thank you for having us here tonight.
Let's have a hand for 100 years of Red Cross. Thank you for coming tonight. And next we're going to recognize our everyday heroes in blue, who have not only been this for 100 years, but 160 years. So the Roswell Police Department this year celebrates its 160th anniversary, and I have a proclamation to read on that occasion. Whereas Roswell, known as the Village, was constructed under the supervision of Roswell King in late 1830s. At that time, law enforcement was handled by the Sheriff of Cobb County. In 1854, Roswell incorporated for the regulation of the police of the village, and the village became the town of Roswell. Roswell became part of Fulton County in 1932 and became part of their jurisdiction. And in 1950, Roswell became known as the City of Roswell, and a formal jail was constructed. Radios were installed in police cars, allowing contact with the Atlanta Police Department. In 1978, the department began a new era of professionalism. For the first time, 100% of the police officers had completed a 240-hour basic law enforcement training course. And whereas the City of Roswell Police Department is a highly respected and fully accredited law enforcement agency, in July of 1995, the Roswell Police Department was awarded CALEA, Commission on the Accreditation for Law Enforcement Agencies, and the Georgia Association of Chief of Police, Georgia State Accreditation. In 2012, our 911 communication was awarded the International Academics of Emergency Dispatch Triple Certification. And whereas currently the City of Roswell Police Department employs over 200 highly trained and state certified employees, which include specialty units in the criminal investigations, criminal suppression, narcotics, K-9, SWAT, crime-free community housing, and 911 communications. And whereas the Mayor and Roswell appreciate the dedication and service of the members of the Roswell Police Department and wish to recognize 160 years of proud service to the citizens of Roswell, now therefore I, Jerry Wood, Mayor of the City of Roswell, do hereby proclaim and congratulate the Roswell Police Department on 160 years of law enforcement service, and would like to thank the men and women of the Roswell Police Department for their selfless dedication and devotion to the protection and citizens of Roswell and the state of Georgia. Let's stand up and give them a hand. Chief, you have something to add?
I do. I became aware of this 160-year anniversary just a few months ago, and I thought 160 is cool, but 175 would be cooler, but I don't think I'll be here for the 175th anniversary, so we're going to celebrate the 160th. What we're going to do to celebrate, we have ordered special commemorative badges for the uniform officers to wear, and all sworn officers will get a badge, but it's kind of a throwback uniform or throwback badge, and that it's very similar to the badge we wore about 100 years ago. So it'll be really a cool thing to bring everybody into this in the department. Everybody doesn't wear a uniform, so for the civilians, they're also going to get a pin which is identical to the badge that they can wear on their jackets or their clothing to help celebrate the 160-year anniversary. So it's an exciting time for us, and the Roswell Police Department is an excellent police department. I'm very, very proud to be associated with the men and women that make up the Roswell Police Department.
And we're very proud of that police department also. And my council does not want these police officers to leave until they can get their picture taken with you. So if gentlemen, if you'd all come forward and stand in front of the dais here, my council would love to get their picture taken with you. Well, we've got awards? We have awards. Let's do the awards first. They didn't mention the awards.
We have two sets of awards. We have an Officer of the Year award, and that's actually consisting of 4 different officers. Officer of the Year, Supervisor of the Year, Detention Officer of the Year, Communication Officer of the Year, and Civilian of the Year. That's actually 5, not 4. But we have those, and in addition to that tonight, we're going to recognize 2 officers for life-saving awards. Each year for the Officer of the Year award, well, first of all, the Roswell Police Department is made up of many outstanding officers and civilians that do their jobs every day, which makes the department so great. And each year we ask the department, a committee, to select the top officers in each of these categories, and that's what's brought us here tonight. They've made that selection. The Officer of the Year for this year is Dana DeWeese. Dana's a detective in CID. He's worked uniform patrol, and particularly or specifically in CID, he works crimes against persons. Recently, we had a missing mother and a child who was missing for about 24 hours. He was one of the lead detectives on that case and did an outstanding job. And in my former life, I was an investigator as well, and he really made me proud of the job that he did in all of CID. So, Officer of the Year, Dana DeWeese, if you would come forward, please. Thank you. Next, we'll recognize Supervisor of the Year, and the Supervisor of the Year is Sergeant Kyle Ratliff. Well, something I didn't mention with Detective Weeks, he's been with us 18 years. Sergeant Ratliff has been with the department for 6 years and is already a supervisor. He's actually been a supervisor right at a year. He was promoted about a year ago to sergeant and has done an outstanding job. He has worked in the Uniform Patrol Division. He did a short time in crime suppression, and currently he is the sergeant of the traffic unit, and he'll be proud to tell you that he also is a motor officer in addition to a sergeant in the traffic unit. So, Sergeant Ratliff. Next, we have Detention Officer of the Year, Juliana Bruman, and she's been with the department for 11 years, and this is kind of an unusual award for her because although she's been most of her career as a detention officer, just in the last few months she transferred over to being an evidence technician for us. So she helps maintain and track all of our evidence that we have. But she's been with the department for 11 years. Again, she's been in the jail, and now she's an evidence tech. And I won't tell the story that she hates for me to tell so much. So Juliana, if you would come up here, please. Next, we have Communication Officer of the Year, Michelle Schneider. She's been with the department for 26 years, and she couldn't be with us tonight. But in addition to being a great communication officer, she also helps train other officers in the communications, as well as being an officer in charge when the 911 manager is not in. So she couldn't be with us tonight, but we'll make sure she gets her award and gets recognized for that. The next will be Civilian of the Year. The Civilian of the Year is Tracy Hanrahan. She's been with the department for 16 years. She is in our training unit and spent her career in the training unit and is really a vital role. She maintains a very good relationship with the Georgia Peace Officers and Standard Training Council, POST. So we have a good relationship with them because of her, and she actually probably has the most important job in the department, which is she's in charge of payroll. So she does a great job there. So everybody's really appreciative of her role. So Tracy, if you would come on up. We have a lot of heroes in the police department. Tonight we're going to recognize two of them. The first we're going to recognize is Officer Averin. Officer Averin was responding to a call where a 16-year-old female was found hanging from a tree. When the officer got there, the person had already been brought down and CPR was being given to her. He took over giving CPR, and because of his efforts, she survived. And the medical personnel has said that because of his quick action and his training, it saved the young lady's life. So we want to recognize him for the life-saving award. Next, we're going to recognize Officer Reed. Officer Reed has only been with our department since October, so he's a very newcomer to the department, but he does an outstanding job. He responded to a call of a person down on Warsaw Road. When he arrived, he found a small child laying in a hallway. He quickly began to perform CPR, and because of his quick action, she survived. And again, medical personnel said that because of his actions, she did survive. And without that, it would have been a very, very bad situation. So, Officer Reed. And that's it. You want some pictures?
Council would like to get their picture taken with each award winner. So if I can have the award winners come forward first, and we'll get everybody's picture. Council, if you'll come to the dais. If your family's here, we'd love to get your family with the award winners as we take these pictures. So we'll all move forward, and Julie Breck will keep this organized. Coming down.
Rainbows and lollipops.
Okay, can, video, yeah, there we go, thank you. You're good, you're all right. Okay, here we go, we got everybody this time, here we go. 1, 2, okay, one more, here we go. 1, 2, very good, thank you. That's good. Okay.
All right, now, everybody in uniform, let's go. You're in uniform, come over here.
just gonna have to stay. All right, here we go. Here we go, one.
I'm taking sections.
Okay, nobody move.
Nobody move.
Two parts, here we go, 1, 2. Okay, don't move anybody. Here we
Don't
go.
move. Don't anybody move.
1, 2, we're gonna Photoshop this together. Yeah, there's too many. 1, 2. Okay. You're all right.
Okay. Okay. We'll wait for a minute to clear the room. Now, why are the rest of these? We got the. Are we voting on the noise ordinance? We got some goodwill people that we want to make sure there's no last minute. Reconsideration. All right, the next item on the agenda is the approval of the consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda? Motion by Councilman Orleans. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Wynn. Does anyone in the audience have any questions regarding the consent agenda? All in favor of the motion, raise their hands. Passes unanimously. At this time, that brings us to the Environmental Public Works Appeal Board of Zoning Appeals approval. Ida Patterson Dorvee. Do I have a
Motion to approve.
motion to approve the nomination of Ida Patterson Dorvee to continue on the Board of Zoning Appeals by Councilmember Wynn? Is there a second? Second by the right side, which would be Orleans and Eigelhart. Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion, raise their hands. Passes unanimously. This time, we'll call upon liaison to the Environmental Public Works Department, Councilmember Rich DiPolito.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This item is approval for the mayor and/or city administrator to sign a contract with Goodwill of North Georgia, Inc. for the provision of clothes and hard goods drop-off services at the Roswell Recycling Center. This item is presented by Mr. Stu Mooring.
Yes, sir, thank you. This is a service at the recycling center for collecting reusable goods. Goodwill has been at that location for 18 years that I know of, and longer than that, I'm sure. We created a request for proposal to consider those charitable organizations that would be interested in providing that service. We received 2. They were reviewed based on the established levels and requirements of service, and Goodwill was the selected organization. And with the approval of this contract, they will begin to pay us at the rate of 11.5 cents per pound for materials that are dropped off. And I will be happy to answer any questions that you might have about that proposal. But staff recommends approval for this contract.
Does the council have any questions? Do we have a motion?
Move to approve.
Motion for approval by Councilmember DiPolito. Is there a second? Second by Councilmember Diamond. Does anyone in the audience have any questions or comments? Yes, sir. Come forward, please.
Anyone collect this, or?
You can give it to Julie. Thank you, sir. You'll give us your name and address.
All right, my name is Edward Zito, Z-I-T-O. My address 2914 Lenox Road, number 13, Atlanta 30324. I respect the council's time, so I'll make sure I stay within my allotted time. I want to thank the committee for doing a thorough job of investigating both organizations to see if they were qualified. And as you know, the committee uses a point system, and Goodwill received a few more points than us in the category of experience doing the job. Well, naturally, Goodwill's been there for 20 years or so. But it did not disqualify American Kidney Services. Some of you have used our services at your home. We have a home pickup. We do about 300,000 pickups a year. That's much more difficult than standing at a truck and having people drop off things to you. The easiest thing we ever did was put a truck at Sandy Springs, where Goodwill was before, of course, and had never compensated Sandy Springs anything over the 30 years they were there. We came in, we paid them thousands of dollars since we've been there 5 or 6 months. And that's just, it's an easy thing to do. It's the qualification of collecting clothes at a truck is not challenging. In fact, I'm not so sure that Goodwill has more experience collecting clothes where the host property is being compensated. We've been down at Sandy Springs, and not only are they happy with the compensation, but the level of service, as we discussed at a former workshop, has improved. So it's not a matter of being able to do it. And in fact, it's a different scenario. The clothes have to be weighed, the truck has to be weighed, reports have to be given, checks have to be cut. It's a little different than what has been happening so far. So my question would be, if Goodwill has more experience paying host locations, then who are they paying, and why haven't they paid Roswell? That would be a question I would pose. Regarding the points on the request for proposal, on that section of the request, well, we won that hands down. We offered 60% more revenue to the City of Roswell than Goodwill did. 60% is a pretty big difference. 5% might be one thing, but 60% is a pretty big difference. When the committee estimated, based on the tonnage, that Goodwill would be providing now from $0 to $100,000, which is great. But of course, American Kidney Services would be providing $160,000. That's a lot more money. That could pay for a patrol car or 2 cars or a police officer. It's a considerable amount of money. It's not 5% or 2%. I don't think this contract is really based on who's capable. Both organizations are very capable. There's no question about that. Goodwill's been doing this a long time, collecting clothes, selling them at thrift stores. American Kidney Services, we're no new kid on the block. We've been doing this 30 years as well. And we do it in a little different manner. Nice to have people come to you. It's an advantage. It costs a lot to have those trucks on the road. That's what's enabling us to be able to pay the City of Roswell, because all of those clothes that we've been collecting will not have to have those 40 trucks out on the road collecting them at the same time. So it's not a matter of who's capable. Both organizations are capable. It's not a matter of who does a better job as far as the charity. Both charities are highly rated. American Kidney Fund is one of the top 3 organizations, charities in the country. 97 cents of every dollar goes to helping kidney patients, financial aid to kidney patients. We're saving lives. Providing jobs is important, saving lives is important too. And I assure you, American Kidney Fund would not jeopardize their reputation by putting their logos on our trucks to go out there. It's a trust factor. It really comes down to money. That's really what this contract is about. It's about the money. And finally, I'd like to say, loyalty is there. Goodwill was given a second chance. The council asked the committee to go back to Goodwill and say, will you match the offer, or even bump it up 10%, 20%, 30%, if not 60%. And they chose not to offer any more money. So I'm just saying, give us a chance. Goodwill's been there 20 years. Give us a year. Give us a year to prove ourselves. You won't be disappointed. Sandy Springs has proven that. You know Kathy Reed down there. Just give us a chance. The worst that can happen is you come away with $160,000. You don't like us, go back to Goodwill. I can answer any questions if you have some.
Does the council have any questions? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Does anyone else wish to speak? Yes, sir, come forward.
She had our card back there. Hello, here we are again. I'm George Staska with Goodwill. This is Elaine Armstrong. I got notes this time. So hopefully I'll stick to script. Okay. So in response, Goodwill has served Fulton County for 90 years. We were formed in 1925. We have a well-established brand in the community.
Speak into the mic there.
Oh, sorry. We have a well-established brand that the community trusts. We would never do anything where we'd knowingly take advantage of a community or damage our long-standing relationships. Okay. For 18 years, we've operated there at the Roswell Recycling Center, and for 18 years, there's been no issues raised with us from the staff that runs the facility or the city in the South. And we believe that speaks volumes as far as the trust that the city places and the public places in our operation there. We have sites that operate just like the one at the Roswell Recycling Center and have for years. We don't pay rent there. We have other sites that we pay rent at, right? For 18 years, right, nobody approached us from the city there asking us to, as rent being a point of negotiations. So there's nothing underhanded here where our competitor implies that we're trying to cheat the city or anything like that. We have multiple relationships across our territory, and all these are under attack by the same tactic. The scoring of the RFP suggests that we are not equally qualified, and we're very different, and we're different in many ways. American Kidney Services is the collection arm of a for-profit, privately held company called Value Village. The funds that are generated by the sale of those goods will have little or no effect in Roswell or the citizens of North Georgia. At Goodwill, when you donate to us, those goods will be sold in the local community, in local stores here in Roswell, to benefit the local citizens of the community of Roswell and surrounding communities. The goods in the Value Village system will probably be taken to their warehouse, cross-docked, and sent out somewhere in their system. They're not even going to be probably sold in the city of Roswell. So when you donate to us, our donations are used to put people to work. That's what we do. And we have a direct positive impact in the communities where we operate, creating jobs, job placements, and that kind of stuff. So yeah, our mission's important. We're founded in 1925 with one thing only, just put people to work in North Georgia, right? We do this in Roswell with our 5 locations and all across our North Georgia territory. In closing, we're not equal. We do a lot of things differently, right? And we feel like that you should consider what Goodwill does as far as mission and the impact we have in the communities around us. Elaine can talk further about the impact.
Good evening, Council. Thank you for having us. I just really wanted to highlight some of the impact that we have made in the city of Roswell. You heard Mr. Zito mention how many donors they had served in their community. We have yet a long-standing history, as staff has noted, 18 years. During that time, we've collected over 500,000 donors that are served just in your community alone, almost 1 million customers. Tax revenue, we have 2 stores here, so we have provided tax revenue back to Fulton County and the city of Roswell. This recycling center also supports 4 jobs for employees that work at Goodwill, and George mentioned the direct effect of our mission services. It's just helpful to know that your donations, every time that somebody donates to Goodwill, it helps somebody else in Roswell. In fact, we helped more than 112 people last year in your city alone for job placement and job training services, and placed many of those people. So I'd like for you to consider that. Again, when your donations go local to Goodwill, they stay here. We're not going to take them anywhere else. It is a direct community impact on your city right here, and we'd like for you to consider keeping us there. We've had a long-standing relationship. We never do anything to jeopardize our brand. Mayor Wood has also been able to come out and cut a ribbon at our recent store last year, so he probably saw firsthand the effect of opening a Goodwill location in your community, and I'd just like you to consider that as you continue on with your vote this evening. Thank you.
Does anyone else wish to speak? Y'all can have a seat.
Thank you.
Anyone else wish to speak on this subject? No, sir. We allow everyone to speak once. We have a question from Councilmember Price.
I'd just like to hear the other gentleman if he has a rebuttal from what we just heard.
Councilmember Price, we will allow you to ask him a question. The American Kidney Found if you have any questions.
Oh, at this time?
Yes.
Well, I may have some things I'd like to say. I'm not sure I'd have a question about it. I don't know how to refute or support anything that's been said, so I think the dialogue between them is helpful.
Well, if I allow rebuttal, then I'll have to allow a sir rebuttal. I'm not, each side has, each vendor has had, or charity has an opportunity to speak. If you have any specific questions, we'll respond to that.
Well, I guess specifically, I'll ask the gentleman why he raised his hand. What was he going to say?
We will give you 1 minute.
Thank you very much. I by no means am here to trash Goodwill. It's a good organization. I don't know why they keep going back to the Value Village. We're very, very proud of Value Village being our partner on this. They're our corporate sponsor. They pay for a lot of the expenses with the trucks going out there. It was not part of the RFP of what store gets what retail. Value Village buys all the items by the truckload. They don't pick one item out here and one item out there and say you get rid of the rest. We weigh it, and then they buy the whole truckload. Everything then from that point is totally recycled. The clothes go on the rack, the hangers go into metals, the plastics, the paper, everything's recycled. We're one of the biggest. We recycle 120,000 pounds of clothes per week. So Value Village, we're proud of Value Village. There's nothing wrong with the fact that Value Village may or be a for-profit. Has nothing to do with this RFP, because we get paid from the time it gets dropped off at the store. Those proceeds go to American Kidney Fund. What happens from them there is insignificant.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Does the council have any other questions for either charity? All right. This time we'll have discussion before we have a motion and a second. We'll hear from council. Any comments or questions before we entertain a vote? Councilmember Price.
We've talked about this at several committee meetings because we had questions, and Mr. Mooring followed up on those, and I think we've learned a good bit more than just came through the RFP, because I think that there was a lot of qualitative assessment there that didn't necessarily address, all those issues that we've talked about. So I feel that we've got two very, very competent and worthy groups to choose from, and I guess what concerns me is that one of them is willing to share some revenues with us, and one of them is willing to almost match that. And I guess I didn't hear from Goodwill to say that they didn't think that the Kidney Fund could do it for that. So then it makes me wonder why they couldn't match it. So if the offer that the Kidney Service is offering us is doable, then that seems like the reasonable course. But if there's a sense that that's an unrealistic offer to us, then that would be a different matter altogether. But I haven't heard that criticism levied, therefore I feel that that the Kidney Service would probably be the preferable choice.
Any other comments before we take a vote? Councilmember Diamond.
I am hugely uncomfortable debating the merits of one charity over another. I think they both serve a valuable resource, and I wouldn't propose to make a decision based on that. To me, it comes down to a couple of things. The idea that we're making money off of a nonprofit is a little uncomfortable anyway, but I think I would weigh that against the value of the rental occupancy that our city's getting on 4 locations. So I believe there is an investment that Goodwill has made here, and the Sandy Springs experience has been very positive, and I hope it continues to be, but it's been 4 months. And I don't think that that's a game changer to me. I feel like, Goodwill has demonstrated an investment in Roswell in 4 rent-paying locations, and that offsets to me any cash that we might get from a business rent, that we're collecting money off of people's clothes. So I'm comfortable with Goodwill at this point, at least until there's a history of anybody else worth looking at again.
Councilmember Wynn.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree thoroughly with Councilmember Diamond. I think we're here to invest in our Roswell businesses, and Goodwill has demonstrated that they want to be a part of Roswell with the 4 standalone buildings, and we appreciate them, and we appreciate everything they've done. So I will be casting my vote for Goodwill. Thank you.
Any further discussion before we entertain a vote? Councilmember Price.
In our packet, it says that we're being asked to sign a contract, or mayor and city administrator to sign a contract, but I don't see the contract. And also I don't see any of the comparisons that we had looked at earlier, between the 2 organizations. And all I see in the packet really is sort of a promotional for Goodwill. And to me, I don't want to be advocated for in that way. I would rather, if we truly have 2 entities to compare, I would like to see us comparing them, freely and with all information available to us.
Mr. Davison, I understand it's 11.5 cents a pound from Goodwill. How many cents a pound was it from the American Kidney?
16.5.
16.5 cents a pound.
18.5, I'm sorry.
18.5 cents a pound. What is the term of the contract, or were they both the same term?
It's 1 year with 2 renewable options.
So that would be renewable at the option of Goodwill?
No, sir, at the option of the city.
The city's option?
Yes, sir.
So the city could choose not to continue this
Correct.
beyond 12 months?
That's correct.
Now, other than the price, are the 2 contracts the same?
The contract would be something that Mr. Davidson's office...
So we have not drafted the contract yet?
No, but it would be the same contract regardless of the vendor.
There's no difference in the contracts
No,
other
sir.
than the
No, sir.
price per pound? Same
Correct.
term, it'll be
Details
12 months.
of coverage and cleanliness and operational, staying out of our way and
And
that sort of
if
thing.
there's a breach of the contract because they don't keep things clean, then is it terminable?
That's correct.
No, there's not. As I understand, the contract is to be drafted, but the city will be drafting the contract.
Have we operated under one?
Do we currently have a contract with Goodwill? I know they're currently on the site.
No, sir, we don't have a written contract.
It's just
been
practice.
the practice of a number of years since before I was here.
Apparently, there's nothing. The practice has worked well. It's just the price that's in question. Any other questions? Any further discussion before we take a vote? All in favor of the motion, raise their hands. That's Councilman Orleans, Eaglehart, Wynn, DiPolito, and Diamond. All opposed. Councilmember Price passes 5-1.
The next item is approval of budget amendment 507-43200-03-24-14 in the amount of $100,000 to increase the city's contribution to the Stormwater Best Management Practices Wetland Design at Roswell Area Park. This item is also presented by Mr. Mooring.
Yes, sir. Thank you. This is a project that is part of our watershed improvement plan and would be aimed at helping to correct bacterial pollution issues in Crossville Creek, specifically by adding some best management practices at Roswell Area Park. The project was approved for a matching grant by EPA. However, because of the timing of the project, 4 years ago, the costs have now escalated, and so our request is to currently the agreement with EPA was for 55% of the cost on the part of the city, 45% of the cost paid by EPA, and a total project cost of $98,000. Our proposal is to increase that by an additional amount of $100,000 from the Stormwater Utility Fund, which would allow us to construct all of the best management practices at the current time. It is staff's recommendation to proceed with this. We have conferred with Recreation and Parks, and they are fully in support of this project, and they are prepared to petition the Finance Department for additional budget funds if the need is there.
Does the council have any questions? Councilmember DiPolito.
Thank you. Mr. Mooring, I think this is a good project, and I think it's important for the city to demonstrate to the public our desire to have best management practices on all our facilities. So I applaud your efforts here. It's unfortunate the cost went up. Is there an opportunity potentially to go back to recover some of this from the federal contribution?
Never say never, but with the nature of the federal appropriation process, it's challenging to develop any sort of increase. I think if there was a show of faith by the city to increase our contribution, that would give us an impetus to be able to approach them and say, look, we're willing to put up an additional X amount of money, $50,000. Is there a possibility to get some additional? But because, you know, they don't really have money sitting around, at best it would probably take some additional time before that could be achieved. But certainly that's an avenue that we can follow and work with our grants coordinator to be able to do that.
Yeah, I'm in support of moving forward, but I would also like us to try to pursue that and see
Absolutely.
if we can
Makes
get
good
reimbursed
sense.
afterward.
I agree.
Does anyone in the audience have any questions or comments? Any further discussion by council? All in favor of the motion, raise their hands. Oh, we don't have a motion? Do we have a motion?
Move to approve.
Motion by Councilmember DiPolito. Do we have a second? Second by Councilmember Diamond. Does anyone in the audience have any questions or comments? Further discussion by council? All in favor of the motion? Passes unanimously.
The next item is approval of a budget amendment in the amount of $78,000 to create the Thomas Street Water Line Replacement Project. Mr. Mooring.
Yes, sir. Thank you. The Thomas Street Waterline project is, Thomas Street runs between Pratt and Pine Grove Road. Currently, there's a 2-inch galvanized pipe there that does not connect to Pine Grove Road. Our plan would be to replace that with an 8-inch ductile iron pipe, meeting our modern standards, and that would bolster the water system in that vicinity. The reason that it is proposed as a budget amendment, this is the next project on our priority matrix for the water system, and the idea would be to transfer funds from another project that will not be completed this year to the Thomas Street water line, and we recommend your approval.
Any questions? Do we have a motion?
Move to approve.
Motion by Councilmember DiPolito for approval. Is there a second? Second by Councilmember Wynn. Does anyone in the audience have any questions or comments? Yes, sir. Come forward, please.
Lee Fleck, Martin's Landing. Mayor, Council, Councilman DiPolito, you read into the motion the budget amendment, but you didn't state specifically the amendment number. Is it safe for me to assume that the amendment number beginning with 505 is actually contained within the Water Enterprise Fund?
Yes.
Kay, could you clarify where the money's coming from?
Yes, sir, that is the water fund.
Thank you.
Anyone else have any questions? Any further discussion by council? All in favor of the motion, raise their hands. Passes unanimously. This time we'll call upon Councilmember Jerry Orland's liaison to the 160-year-old Police Department and the Public Safety Department.
It's almost as old as you are, isn't it?
Almost.
Item on the agenda tonight is approval of an amendment to the City of Roswell Code of Ordinances, Chapter 13, Offenses and Miscellaneous Provisions, Section 13.1.13, Noise Control, and Chapter 8 of the Health Public Safety, Section 8.8.3, Types of Nuisances, Noise, Creating Unnecessary Noise. This is just the first reading, and it will be presented by Rusty Grant, the Chief of our Police Department. And have the first reading, Mr. Davidson.
Thank you. This is an ordinance to amend Chapter 13, Offenses and Miscellaneous Provisions, in Chapter 8, Health and Public Safety of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Roswell. Now therefore, the Mayor and Council of the City of Roswell, pursuant to their authority, do hereby adopt the following amendment. Chapter 13, Offenses and Miscellaneous Provisions of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Roswell, Georgia, is hereby amended by adding a new section to Article 13.1, Offenses involving public peace and order, to read as follows, text of which is incorporated herein by reference. And Chapter 8, Health and Public Safety of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Roswell, Georgia, is hereby amended by deleting current Section 8.8.3S in its entirety and replacing it with a new Section 8.8.3S to read as follows, text again which is incorporated herein by reference, and if approved, this would be the first reading.
Thank you, and I apologize for having the incorrect date up there. I just noticed that. But let me begin. We're obviously here today to talk about the noise ordinance. Let me talk first about what we're not here for. Roswell is already a city that has businesses and homes in close proximity to one another. The homes are here because, and the people live in these homes because of our parks, our public safety, the close proximity to other cities that have attractions that Roswell doesn't have, our restaurants, the businesses, to some are what Roswell is. Some would argue it's not just the fine restaurants that we have, but to many the fine restaurants that we have in Roswell is who we are. So we're past the point of deciding, do we want to have homes and businesses in close proximity to one another because we're already there. This PowerPoint presentation I'm going to show you is you've already seen. There are a few additions, and I'll slow down for those, not that I'm going to speed through it. But here you see the number of complaints that we've had. We've had 977 noise complaints from January to March, And this line graph just demonstrates that again, and a breakdown of the different beats. We've had a number of complaints in the last year. In 2013, 865 complaints. As a result of that, we had 14 citations issued for a noise ordinance violation. In 2014, through March 11th, we had 124 complaints, which resulted in 1 citation. This is the current Roswell noise ordinance that we have to enforce and that everyone needs to comply with. As you can see, in a residential area from 7 a.m. to 11 p.m., they can rise to a level of 70 decibels, and that's measured from the property line. From 11 p.m. to 7 a.m., that's 60 decibels. In a commercial area from 7 a.m. to 11 p.m., it's 70 decibels. And from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m., it's 65 decibels. In an industrial area at all times, it's 70 decibels. What I've done since the last time I talked with y'all and have talked with the Restaurant Association is I looked at some of our neighboring cities to see exactly what they have. And I went to Alpharetta first. And what I have from Alpharetta are Alpharetta noise levels. As you can see, they in every category except the industrial area, they are well below, not well, they're below ours. They have the exact same times that we have on our current ordinance, but their noise level by decibel are less than what we have. I also looked at Sandy Springs, and what Sandy Springs does, they have an ordinance more similar to our proposed ordinance, where they don't use a decibel meter to measure their levels. They use the human ear, and their ordinance is a little more confusing than ours, which is not confusing, but it's just, to me, it's not a very well-written ordinance. But essentially, they measure from the property line, and they use the human ear to measure a violation. I was asked to look at the Greenville, South Carolina. Well, let me also add that I checked with Milton. They also use a sound meter to measure their noise ordinance violations. They tell me that they have very, very few noise complaints up there, and really couldn't give me any anecdotal evidence either way as to how their noise ordinance works. They say they just don't have a lot of noise complaints. Their city is not really very similar to ours. They're much more rural than we are here in Roswell. And looking at the Greenville, South Carolina, just as a refresher, you can see that they basically have a central business district, which is different than what we do, but they do use a sound meter and measure it by a decibel level. As you can see, at times it's higher than what we have, but again, they do have a more defined central business district in Greenville than we do in Roswell. Our proposed ordinance, and again, this is the Athens-Clarke County model, and this is one that has been Georgia Supreme Court tested, is that from Sunday to Thursday, from 7 a.m. to 11 p.m., we measure 300 feet from the sound or from the sound of the noise, or from the property line, whichever is further. Friday from Saturday is from 7 a.m. to midnight is 300 feet, and then Sunday from Thursday from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. it drops to 100 feet, and then Friday to Saturday, midnight to 7 a.m., it drops to 100 feet. And this is a map that just shows one of the restaurants, not to pick on Canton Street, but it's just one that we're most familiar with. But it just shows the distance of a 300-foot radius. Just to remind everybody, a 300-foot radius, that's not the distance across the circle that you see, it's just the half of the circle. So from the center of Pasties to the outside of to the edge of the yellow circle, it's 300 feet. To the edge from the center of the restaurant to the red circle, it's 100 feet. And then looking at Pure, this is actually measured from the center of the restaurant, as I explained to Pure when we met with them last week. The actual measurement will be from the source of the sound. On Pure, that usually comes more so from the front of the restaurant. So this measurement again is from the center of the business as opposed to the source of the sound. So this map would actually be shifted more toward the 11 o'clock direction, give them more of an area in that direction as opposed to the 4 or 5 o'clock direction. And here you can see 9 Street Kitchen, the same measurements. This is just an overlap, just to show the different restaurants that we have in that community, and just the overlap of, not necessarily of the sound, but of the overlap of the different distances and where they relate to one another. These pins actually indicate locations in the city that I've actually gone out with a small amount of spray paint and actually put a dot on either on the pavement or on the edge of the bricks to indicate the different distances if someone wanted to go out and actually listen to the sound. These measurements, because I didn't know what the source of the sound would be at the time these measurements were taken, essentially took a laser detector like we use to measure speed. There's a distance indicator on there, and using that laser, I measured out 100 feet and 300 feet, bouncing it off basically the buildings. So whatever distance you would see, you would probably add maybe 10 feet away from the actual business to give them the benefit of the doubt, but it really just depended on where the music was coming from, if music is what we were listening to. And as you can see with 9th Street, I didn't want to stand out in the middle of the street, but 285 is basically to the edge of the street from the edge of the building at 9th Street. And these are the distance to Pure. This would be the front of Pure. The actual measurement was taken, I bounced the laser off a car that was sitting right here at the edge of the sidewalk. So that's giving, that 300 feet is actually further out than what it would actually be, but that was the measurement that I used. As I look at these noise ordinance, I don't consider this to be a perfect noise ordinance. It is something that's been Supreme Court tested here in Georgia, but there's some different areas that we can look at. And I've talked with Mr. Davidson and asked his opinion that if we were to start changing this ordinance, is that going to vastly impact the constitutionality of the ordinance? And he can speak on that further, but basically he said it would not. As long as we're tweaking it, there are some changes that we can make, and it could still pass that test, although the ordinance as it exists has been tested. But the issues to decide, as I see them, is using a sound meter to measure the sound in decibels versus using the human ear, the days of the week, the time of the day or night, the distances are something that we could look at. Creating an entertainment or business district, the downside to that is in many cases the homes are so close, many times share property lines, so that may be difficult to do. Apartment noise, the bass sounds, as we all know, is something that we receive a lot of complaints about, the bass noise, animal noise, and also exemptions to the noise ordinance that we, or that y'all decide to pass, should you decide to change the current ordinance. So that's where we're at. As you know, we've got a lot of complaints from all over the city, and that's what's brought about where we are today to talk about the noise ordinance. Do we have any questions?
To simplify this, in the officer enforcing the noise ordinance, if he receives a complaint, walk me through this. How would the officer decide to issue a citation or not?
Well, assuming he had a complaint, he would go out and meet with the complainant and find out, listen to their story, and he would hear the noise himself. With the current noise ordinance, would
the officer need to hear the noise to issue the citation?
With the current ordinance, the sound meter would need to hear that. Now,
and the new ordinance, how would it work?
The new ordinance, the officer would hear the sound and determine if it was too loud.
So if the 300 feet is, at what hours does that apply?
300 feet would be, just to make sure I'm telling you I want to be accurate. 300 feet would be Sunday through Thursday, 7 a.m. to 11 p.m., and Friday through Saturday, 7 a.m. to midnight. So basically it'd be 7 a.m. to 11 a.m.
Before
during the week.
11, if he received a complaint and he was 300 feet away from the subject that was being complained, and he could hear it, and distinctly enough to say that sound is coming from there, then he would issue a citation.
He could.
He could.
He could. Just like now, if the reading were such on the decibel meter that it was
Well,
above
I
the
mean, I'm just
reading, he
saying,
could do that.
what would the policy of the police department be if we passed this?
It would be just like it is now, it'd be up to the officer.
It'd be up to the
And-
officer, but the law would say if he can hear it 300 feet away, then he has probable cause to issue a citation.
That's correct. Just like if his radar said 80 miles an hour,
Right.
he could write that citation
He
or
could
not.
either give a warning or issue a citation.
Right. And what you'll hear later is that in the vast majority of the instances, people are told to turn down their music. They're not issued citations.
So it's understood the vast majority of the complaints are in the apartment complexes.
That's true. By the number, right.
You wanted to go, if you'll go back to that, I think you didn't, you skipped over that pretty quickly.
Yeah, well, that actually doesn't have a breakdown of specifically apartments. It just has
I understand, but the zones in which we had the biggest amount of were C1 and C2, so if you'll go back to this, so folks can focus where those two were.
Well,
C2 would include the apartments along Holcomb Ridge Road.
correct. Yeah, this is.
That's where the biggest part of it is.
This is Holcomb Ridge Road right here.
And C1 would include some of the old Roswell.
Right.
Thank you. Any other questions council may have? Councilmember DiPolito.
Thank you. Chief, since a number of these complaints come from the apartment complexes, is there a way to work within our crime-free housing initiative to encourage the apartment complex owners to get involved as well?
We can look at doing that. Most of the time when we get these calls into apartment complexes, by the time we get there, the noise is no longer occurring. I mean, that's the situation that we face. And many times, or most times, there is nothing that we can do once we get there because we don't hear the sound. But yeah, we can take a look at doing that. It's part of something we're looking at doing is trying to reduce the number of non-emergency calls that we have, and that would be in line whether it's an alarm call or a noise complaint. Those are the things that we're looking to do is try to find ways to lower those number of calls.
Yeah, and I think if we could educate the property managers as to the new ordinance, should it be passed, then they might be able to police it themselves and help out a little bit.
Right.
To reduce the number of calls.
And most apartment complexes also have a courtesy officer that's a police officer that lives in that complex, and many times they get the calls before we do, so that helps reduce the number of calls that we get too.
Right.
So.
Okay, thanks.
Any other council member have any questions for the chief? Do we have a motion?
Motion is just approval of the first reading.
We have a motion to approve the first reading is by Councilman Orleans. Is there a second? There's a second by Councilmember Diamond. At this time, we'll open it up for public comment, questions or comments. If you'd like to speak, come raise your hand, please. Yes, sir, come forward, please.
I will take 1 minute, Mr. Mayor. Members of the council, Doug Curling, New Kent Capital. We own a number of commercial properties in Roswell, 3 on Canton Street, which are occupied by restaurants. I don't really have a comment on the residential side of this. I couldn't really tell that it's that big a problem since only 15 citations were issued anyway, given the grand scheme of things in Roswell. But from a business perspective, this is a very sensitive topic for us. And I personally am against any subjective metric. I think we ought to have an objective metric. I think businesses are used to being regulated, but we're regulated with a bright line. So we prefer a definitive ordinance that's measured by some kind of device that we can comply with.
Thank you, sir. Who'd like to speak next? Yes, sir, come forward, please.
My name is Joseph McFadden. I'm the Director of Operations for Pure Taqueria, and I want to say thank you very much for this time, and I also want to say thank you to the Chief for giving us some time last week to really get to know this ordinance. I want to start off by saying that Roswell is all about balancing regulations between encouraging economic vitality and protecting and promoting healthy neighborhoods. So we want to be a part of that. We're very proud to be in Roswell now. We're very proud of the support that the community has given us, and we want to give that back. We want to be the type of business that brings pride to our community and that is a part of the great things that are happening in Roswell. We understand that restaurant and bars must be subject to regulation, and we welcome that. We want to be a safe place that everybody can go and have fun. However, we can't support the adoption of the proposal as written, specifically because the ordinance is taken verbatim from the Athens-Clarke County ordinance as written, but it omits two important exceptions, and one of them is an exception given to businesses for noise created in the normal accordance of business. That's not included, but that is in the Athens-Clarke County Code of Ordinance right now. And residents cannot make a noise complaint against businesses that have an adjoining property line with the residents. So if we're going to base anything going forward, we should include those as well. And I think that it's important to all of us to make sure that that we understand that the Georgia Supreme Court did test this ordinance, but the violator in this case was a college student who was playing with his garage band in a house in the middle of a neighborhood. And it survived the challenge based on the fact that he didn't get a warning. And that was the basis of his challenge. And we have to understand that the Athens-Clarke County has one dominant industry. It's the University of Georgia. And all the laws and ordinances are based to support that. We here in Roswell have a very different economic base. And we have to understand that any ordinance that supports the mission statement of the City of Roswell has to be written for that variety that was mentioned before. I have a few suggestions. Any ordinance that's written should have a special section for restaurants, and that should include at least a minimum of 300 feet and 1,000 feet. If we go with 100 feet as written, then people could make a noise complaint from the back of our parking lot, even though there is language in the ordinance proposed that says that the measurement could start from our property line. We also believe that using the audible level is important. The officer should be able to hear something, but I think that should be followed up with a measurable reading from the source. And that's very important to us. If the restaurant or bar or business is being accused of violating the ordinance, we would like something tangible that shows exactly where the line has been crossed and by what degree. And I just want to conclude by saying Roswell deserves the best. We are one of the leading communities in not only the state of Georgia, but the Southeast. And we need more time to research and craft a solution that doesn't punish safe, healthy, job-creating businesses. Sound is not noise. And sometimes in the ordinances written, they get confused. And sound is measurable. Noise is a divisive, subjective term. But if a citizen clears trees from their backyard, the business could be held responsible for allowing sound to go into their yard, even though the citizen cleared the trees on their own property. So the way that sound travels is based on all kinds of environmental factors, none of which can be controlled by any group or individual, even though they might be impacted. I think we can do better than ordinance as it's written now, and there's no disagreement. We all believe that this is just a starting point, but we can do better than a ordinance that makes running jackhammers for 12 hours a day legal, but makes Christmas carolers illegal. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Who'd like to speak next? Yes, come forward, please.
Hi, I'm Vivian Benson. I live at 209 Prospect Street in Roswell. And I'd rather listen to a jackhammer than pure. I've lived in Roswell for 38 years. I think my street runs parallel with Highway 9. So my backyard looks directly into Pure's roof. And just the fact they're on top of the roof, if that was enclosed, it would really help. It's louder in my yard. I've measured it myself. It's louder in my yard than it is at Pure, and I think it's just the fact that I'm on a hill. And even without the music, I can hear conversations, what people are even saying in my yard. It's unbelievable. They cranked up Saturday about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and it was just like I have a crowd of people in my backyard. And we talked to Pure last year. They said, I think they said it was maybe from, they opened up the roof maybe from Wednesday to Saturday, or maybe Wednesday to Sunday, I can't remember, but if it's a pretty day, Pure is on the roof. They play it soft for a while and then they crank it up. Kind of goes back and forth. My sister lives with me on and off. She has a terminal lung disease, and last summer we slept in my living room. So we have a door between us and Pure. I understand, you know, I'm all for businesses and tax dollars and all that. I love Roswell. I love the fact that it's grown. I partied hardy at one time in my life. You know, I hit that Buckhead scene. I can tell you all the bars there, Otto's, Peachtree Cafe, Harrison's. I was there longer than I should have been. And I can tell you what goes with these places. They're not restaurants. They're bars that serve food. And I know what goes on in all of them. With bars, you get drugs and all kinds of other things. We're talking about dense population, and that's going to happen. And you've got all these bars you can walk to, and it's not good. I think Roswell's becoming a strip like Beaufort Highway, Sandy Springs, Buckhead. The Buckhead Coalition came in and cleaned all that out, unfortunately, after a few murders. And I think that will happen too, but you know, I'll be old and gray by the time that happens. So anyway, bars don't go away. Once they get their liquor license, they're there to stay. I hit them in my 20s, I hit them in my 30s. They're there for a very long time.
If we could focus on the noise, it would help. I understand your opinion on bars, but tonight we're not discussing the restaurant industry, we're discussing the sound ordinance.
They're loud. They're loud, and they're in my backyard. You know, I would like to, I am so glad that the police department has taken over this, and I hope that that they can do something about it. So that's been a real relief. But anyway, thank you very much.
You'd like to speak next? Yes, sir, come forward.
Mayor, council members, thank you. I'm here to, and you have in front of you a copy of a handout that I've prepared for you called Support for Amendment of Chapter 13 in order to reduce excessive
Could you give us your name and address?
I'm sorry, sir, Mayor. Jeffrey B. Bradley, 185 Kings Mill Court, Roswell, 30075. The first page basically says we're here to support the amendment. The second page makes the statement that as a resident of Roswell, whose quality of life is adversely affected by the increasing late-night music noise from the Canton Street area, including Alpharetta Street, I support and our neighbors support the new ordinance. It seems to me that the most important issue is the standard for measurement. And that standard, in my opinion, should become plainly audible, as the police chief has proposed. The plainly audible standard has been held to be valid all throughout the United States in numerous cities, towns, counties. The next slide basically is a quote, basically a representative assessment when the New York City Code was dealing with this issue as it relates to plainly audible versus the measurement of sound. And those issues, the complexities, the challenges, the problems, and fundamentally, many communities have determined that the measurement of sound by meters does not work. And we would suggest that in Roswell, I would suggest that it is not working. The next slide is representative cities and counties with the plainly audible standard. I could have listed hundreds of them. I picked a few. Cambridge, Massachusetts, Jewett, Greene County, New York, Gainesville, Florida, Valdosta, Athens, Nashville, Tennessee, and the list goes on. Closing thoughts, the current ordinance is not working. Plainly audible needs to be the standard. Extreme noises are being generated by music from certain restaurants with no reasonable time of night constraints. The extreme noise is negatively affecting the people who live on the Vickery Creek side of Kings Mill Court as the noise travels up Vickery Creek into all of those homes. Thank you.
Does anyone else wish to speak? Yes, come forward, please.
Good evening, Mayor, Town Council. Thank you for the opportunity. My name is Leela Mormon. I live at 185 Kings Mill Court. Can you hear me? Sorry. Noise. Roswell, 30075. I would like to ask all those present who have been adversely affected as recently as this past Saturday night to stand up. We live much further than 300 feet from the Canton Street restaurant area. But we get the sound, and most especially the percussive sound, until well beyond midnight and into the wee hours of the morning. And if the restaurants say that they cannot survive without inflicting this kind of abuse to the citizens of the surrounding area, you know that's nonsense, and they know that's nonsense. Part of the mission of this noise ordinance is to protect the quality of life of the citizens of the community. We are those citizens. Thank you.
Yes, come forward, please.
My name is Randy Schultz. I live at 505 Canton Walk in Providence. I support the changes. The current decibel reading methodology is not adequate, and myself and others in our neighborhood have experienced that firsthand, in that the police will be called on a noise complaint. They will use the decibel meter. It will not register at a sufficient level. However, in our homes, you can clearly hear the music, and you can hear it over your TV. You can hear it over any music that you're playing in your home. So having said that, I think audible is a good way to go, because it's much easier to hear from an audible perspective. From an investment perspective, you know, I understand that restaurants and other owners have invested quite a bit of money, and I respect that. However, in our community, we've invested over $20 million in our neighborhood, and we're not in an apartment complex, just to be clear. So we've invested quite a bit of our funds in trying to make Roswell a better place to live. We want to be able to sit in our homes, have conversations at night on weekends without having to listen to music coming from restaurants and bars. This does not have to be a lose-lose situation for anyone. There are currently bars and restaurants that play music, and I'll give you 2 examples. Noka at the end of the street, Provisions in their upstairs club. The main difference is they play their music inside. They're not an outdoor music venue. So there's a way that you can play music, generate revenue for your establishment, but it needs to take into account all of the stakeholders that are subjected to that business operation. And for the residents that live along Canton Street, there are approximately 70 of us back there. This is a big concern. We support the change to the new code. Thank you.
Does anyone else wish to speak? Yes, come forward, please.
Good evening. My name is Aaron Saldana. I live at 225 Kings Mill Court, Roswell, Georgia, 30075. My wife and I have 2 daughters, a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old. And just like the other members of the Kings Mill community have mentioned, even though we're very far from Canton Street, we can still hear the music, and we've heard it into the wee hours of the night. We support the new ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Does anyone else wish to speak? Yes, sir. Come forward, please.
Hello, Mayor and Council. I'm Rick Clark, representing 9th Street Kitchen in Canton Street, 982 Canton Street. I agree with Mr. Curling. The subjective nature of playing the audible is just, there's no way to go there. You can't just let someone's discretion decide. I agree that if an officer arrives and decides that it is loud enough to measure, let the officer measure it at that point. Reaching a standard of measurement is something that everybody here, I don't know if everybody here is aware of what decibel level certain things are. Does anybody know what a car horn is? Does anybody know what a pleasant conversation is? Your 70 decibel level is a regular conversation, what you're having right now, which means that Mr. Schultz would not be able to have a conversation on his porch that they've spent a great deal of money on, I agree, without other people hearing it and being in violation of the noise ordinance. On the way here, the phone ringing at the front steps is in violation of the noise ordinance as written here at any time of day or night because it's over 300 feet, plainly audible. Find another method. I do have a question for Chief. The sound meters that you're currently using, is that an A or C weighting that you're using to measure those sounds? Okay.
Chief, if you'll come to the microphone.
Sorry.
And for the rest of us, could you explain the difference?
Sure. The A reading is basically, well, first of all, there's the A reading and a C reading. C rate readings are the bass reverberations that you would hear. The A readings would be those other sounds other than the bass.
Thank you, sir.
Our current ordinance does not measure the C measurement at all.
Okay. So my point is that the C weighting is not even factored in either one of the ordinances, perhaps including that which is the constant drumming, which is what really drives people crazy. That's something that if you could factor that in, get a reasonable measurement on that, virtually all the sound meters have the ability to measure A and C. As Charlottesville, Virginia found out, they're having the same kind of a problem. Their sound meter does no good, yet when they change it, which they're moving to change it to count C weightings as well, then they'll solve a lot of those problems. Percussion and bass is a big problem. So, but moving on, we have multiple things that you're going to knock out in Roswell. Weddings, potentially, 300 feet. Look at, if council would please just go out in the parking lot, talk to each other across the parking lot, see if you can hear it. When you get to 300 feet, that's at any time of day or night, you're in violation. I would suggest finding a measurement you can take where I have one more question. I understood that the current noise ordinance was on the receiving property. not the emanating line. Is that correct?
It's measured from the property line of the
where it's
receiving
being
property.
received. Well, on the screen, it said from the emanating, which would be the source of it. I agree with that, but that's not the current noise ordinance. So at this point, that was inaccurate there. So it's actually the receiving property. It said emanating property on the screen, so I was just trying to make that distinction if possible. So
That's
I
my
would
understanding,
suggest.
it's receiving. Chief, Mr. Davidson, would you clarify to make sure I'm not misstating here? Let's get a clarification.
Sure.
It says that all noise measurements shall be made at or within the property line of the impacted site.
Okay, so it's not the emanating, it's actually the receiving property.
Impacted would be receiving.
The receiving, okay, all right. So that correction would help. But I agree, if we could come up with a reasonable amount of sound from the emanating property, then that should be a reasonable amount of sound at any other receiving property, regardless of the fact that the champion yodeler can be heard 50 miles away. I mean, that's a voice 50 miles away. So sound travels. We can't do anything about that. We hear the concerts at the river. We can't complain. We hear the crewers at the river. The coxswain, we can hear him on his bullhorn every morning at 6 o'clock. So you're looking at a lot of things change if you adopt an ordinance that's subjected to this. Thank you.
Yes, come forward, please.
I'm Janet Schneider, 205 Kings Mill Court. I hear all of this concern about 300 feet. I live over a half mile away from Canton Street as the bird flies. And this Saturday, I had to close my windows. And I said, oh, it starts again. It goes on all summer. It's terrible. It's awful. And it's not that I can hear it if I listen for it. It's that I can't turn up a television loud enough to block it. So we're not talking a reasonable amount of sound coming from a restaurant. We're talking about blaring music that goes on past 2 o'clock in the morning. And this is every weekend, Thursday night, Friday night, Saturday night, Sunday, and it goes on and on. And yes, Roswell makes noise. It's fun to be in Roswell. It's fun to have all of this around, but it doesn't have to go on forever at that kind of volume. And no, I don't think they should close. And yes, people like to party, but they don't have to blare it at that kind of level. Anyway, thank you.
Does anyone else wish to speak? Yes, come forward, please.
Mayor and Council, I'm Betty Dickey at 98 Sloan Street, Roswell, Georgia, 30075. I think it's just the difference between hearing it at 11 o'clock than at 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock in the morning. Maybe they should just change to mood music, just lighter. I don't think anyone wants to change Roswell and the entertainment and what we have now. It's just toning it down. And just the difference. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone else wish to speak? Back to council. Further discussion from council. Councilman Orleans.
I was just going to say I encourage council members, considering everything you heard tonight and before we come back for a second reading, to get out with the chief and stake out the 100-foot, 300-foot lines and try to get your own thoughts and feelings about the different sounds that come out, and try to be a few night owls out and catch it at different times, 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock, whatever you can do. Thank you.
I would encourage the council to, Ms. Dickey made a good point, what's acceptable at 1 is different than what's acceptable at 10, and I'm not sure that we've done as much as we can with the hours of operation. My observation when I come through Roswell at midnight is dead.
Come visit us.
I understand. I mean, when I know when I leave late in the evening, it seems to have quietened down, but then I'm not close enough to hear it like y'all. I know that I was remarking, I was pleased that Roswell does not have the buckhead crowd that stays up till 4 in the morning. I never want that. I think we've got, but you're right. We need to find a solution that's a win-win for everybody, and I hope this council will look for it, because we want residences, we want restaurants, and I hope they can coexist. Other discussion by council before we entertain a motion. Councilmember Diamond.
Thank you, sir. I think there's, as often happens in these, we start to get down in the weeds of the detail of how we could make it perfect. And I don't think in this kind of thing you can ever solve all these issues. But I think if you read the purpose of it, that, the standards are meant to reduce excessive community noises, which are harmful and otherwise detrimental. That's really the standard. It's not if you're annoyed by the person on the deck next to you, you call the police. That's not traditionally been an issue, but when you have a consistent chronic issue, and the Kingsmill folks certainly have had that, I think some of that is an anomaly like we've seen with Verizon, where just certain times things travel and noise travels in such an odd way, and you guys are so far from it, and people in between you aren't hearing it like you're hearing it. And I'm not sure how we ever truly address that, but I wonder how the ghost tours factor into this, because where the Kings Mill folks live, it would make me crazy to hear people just screaming every so often when you never know when it's coming. I was down there on a Friday night, and it's a little disarming. But I do think this is a great first start. I think it's been tried in other places, and I think Greenville has struggled, and we heard that from them with the metered approach. They're still struggling with the combination of business and people living there, and the urbanization that we're having is so new to us. I think we can benefit from other people's experience, so I'm comfortable moving forward to at least second reading on this.
Councilmember DiPolito.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree with Councilwoman Diamond, and the goal of this ordinance is to create a win-win. So the goal is not to punish the businesses, but the goal is to make sure that we have a good quality of life for our residents. And I think there is some middle ground, and we can achieve both. And I've had the fortune of going to Athens just recently, and it seems to be thriving. They have this ordinance as well. So I think they're, as burdensome as this may sound to the business community, or at least certain members of the business community, I think our officers are very reasonable, and I think we can move forward on this ordinance and make this a situation that is viable for both our residents and for our businesses, because that's the goal. And if we find that we're having continued issues, we'll continue to take a look at it. And that's, that's something that Roswell, I think, does very well. We have a noise ordinance now that's not working, and I think we all acknowledge that. So we're coming up with something new, and we're going to try that. And hopefully between now and the next reading, with whatever changes we make, this will get us to where we need to be.
Mr. Davidson, I had a question. Plainly audible. Does that mean you would have to be able to distinguish what people were saying, or just you could say there was a noise emanating? I know that where I live, I hear Roswell High playing football games. I know they're exempt, but they're 2 miles away.
We actually have that defined in the ordinance.
If you'll tell, what does that mean?
It says it shall mean any sound emanating from a specific sound-producing sources as set forth below, which can be heard from the distances set forth below, which is the 300 and 100, using the following sound measurement standards. Measurement shall be by the auditory senses of a person standing at a distance no less than the required minimum distance from the source of the sound. For music and other noise, words and phrases need not be discernible. For music and other noise, bass reverberations are included.
So I guess my question would be, if Roswell High wasn't exempt, could I file a complaint against Roswell High 2 miles away on those certain nights when the wind's right and the cloud cover's right?
Yes.
Under the proposed ordinance, you could.
What was the question?
Couldn't we do that now?
Well, I know Roswell
If
High
they
is
weren't
exempt,
exempt.
but I'm just, I'm concerned about the way noise carries, and 2 miles away, it's scary. It doesn't bother me, but then again, it's a football game, it's high school. And I'm just using that as an example. Noise carries strangely sometimes. Councilmember Wynn.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I see what you're saying, but I think what I'm hearing from our residents is not so much the noise, but it's the time. I mean, 10 o'clock at night, that's fine. You might be out there on your patio with a glass of wine, boogieing with the music, and it's free. Only you have to do is just pay for have your glass of wine sitting out there. I think it's more the time that I'm hearing, like 1, 2 o'clock in the morning, 4 and 5 days a week. That's what I'm hearing from them. It's not so much all the, noise certain times of the day. It is when it goes on and on and on, and they're trying to put the 2- and 4-year-old to bed, and everybody else is trying to get to bed, and they just can't get there. So that's what I'm hearing from the residents.
My concern was that 300 feet isn't, if there's nothing between you and that structure before 11 o'clock, is, my voice carries. They can hear me 300 feet away if I'm just talking. Those folks that can hear well. So, I do think we need a lot more looking at this, because we all need to get along with each other, and I think both sides make good points. I'm troubled by how we resolve this. I'm not sure how we do it, but I just know that the 300 feet before 11 o'clock, I'm not sure. After 11 o'clock, it's a different world. Before 11 o'clock, I'm concerned about. All right, other comments before we take a vote? Is that a comment, or is that just a look?
Well, I think that I will work a few things through before the next reading.
All right. All in favor of the motion, raise their hands. First reading. That is unanimous. Next item, please. Is that it? City Attorney report.
I just have...
It's not 11 o'clock yet. You can make a lot of noise as you leave.
I have a recommendation for closure to discuss personnel litigation and real estate.
Do we have a motion for closure? We have a motion for closure. Motion by Councilman DePolito. Is there a second? Second by Councilman Wynn. All in favor, raise their hands. Passes unanimously. We have closure. It's 300 feet. It's just not.